Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. If you've ever been curious about how tapestries are made, this is the episode for you. I interview Erin M. Riley, and we talk all about her large-scale tapestries and what it takes to create these incredible works of art. So welcome to the show, Erin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to chat with you. I was just saying how much I was loving going through all your gorgeous tapestries online. Like, obviously they're way better in person, but it's so cool to see what you're doing with this tapestry world. We were just talking about how, like, when I look at tapestries before, it was like you see them in a church or in like the Vatican. It's just like this church scene or something very old, and you're doing such a modern day tapestry. Like, I love what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, learning about tapestry, it was like I was really bad at art history, and I never went to museums as a kid, and when I went to art school, it was like starting to see tapestries, but I was also learning how to make tapestries, so there was this weird disconnect of like what I was seeing and what I was making and what I was thinking about. So, um, it always made sense to make whatever I wanted to make, and then there was this weird sort of like surprise, that my work was um like modern or aggressive or, non-traditional. And then I was like, but it's 2004, it's like this is when I make it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's why did you choose like tapestries as your medium?
well, I learned to sew like when I was younger, I made gimp bracelets and I was really obsessed with seed beads. I would like sew everything and make these bracelets and I loved home ec. I loved sewing. So like, making was really something I connected with at a young age. And then when I went to art school, I was painting and I was drawing, but I thought that I should be sort of more practical as far as like art school's a little bit of a risk to begin with. So I thought like, oh, I'd be fashion or oh, I'd be um, something that maybe could produce a job over painting. Um, and then I discovered fibers, which was this like major that I had no idea about. And one of the main sort of requirements was weaving, like beginning weaving. And so that I took that class as my first elective. And weaving just became this like crazy combination of all of these things I had always like loved doing, like making and fabric and um math. There's so much math to weaving, and so there was this like connection off the bat. And then tapestry was one of the like segments. There was three segments of the class, and tapestry was one of the segments. And so I found this like medium where I could have all these attributes of the making that I really loved with the visual aspects of painting that I really loved. So it combined this like it was like this synergy that I found at really early, which I feel very lucky about.
Yeah, it's like you're painting with wool.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And talk a little bit about that. Like, I have no idea how these things are made. They look very time intensive. You said there's a lot of math involved. Like, talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so I work, looms are super interesting like species. They're like very regional to the United States. You'll find a lot of one kind on in California and a lot of different kinds on the other side. They're huge. They're usually not moved unless somebody like, pays the money to move them. Otherwise, they're sort of like stuffed in an attic somewhere. So I got my original Macomber loom for free. It was trash. And then I sort of started this, journey of making tapestries in my studio, which, um, it's like it is a lot of math. So there's a lot of setup and making the warp and um, dressing the looms. And I work from drawing, so there's like a lot of setup, which allows you to be really contemplative and thinking through what you're going to make and preparing you for the next sort of weeks of weaving. And I do the setup um, so that there's time to just weave, so I don't have to keep setting up every piece. And yeah, so you set up the loom, you get it all ready, and then you prepare your drawings, which are also called cartoons for tapestries. So there's this drawing that's always under the warp. So it's a little bit like color by number, but it's there is traditionally, like in the olden days too, there was always like a painting behind what the weavers were making so that they could follow what the artist had prescribed. And I work from drawings, and then I also dye a lot of my yarn, and I get my yarn from like very non-traditional places. Like a lot of it is called production excess, which means that it's just the waste of the rug industry, which I feel sort of strongly about finding wool that's not brand new. I like to sort of reuse and find things that are not going to be added to the waste of the textile industry. So it's a lot of, prep, dyeing the wool, taking it apart, mixing it back together. I really love color and like having this sort of background in painting and drawing. Color is super important to me, so I spend a lot of time getting colors right and mixing colors and creating gradients before the weaving starts. And then, when I start, then it's usually like a week for the medium size, and then there's like the big ones take 6 weeks or 4 weeks, depending. But I've always in the 10 years that I've lived in Brooklyn, I've had a home studio, so it's really just this like nonstop. Once I'm starting a piece, it's this nonstop sort of like get up, weave all day, go to bed. Like it never ends basically until it ends.
I love that you're like living in your studio too, right? So it's like always there, it's always ready to go. And do you find that you like when you're doing it, it's like kind of healing or you're in like a flow state?
Yeah, for sure. There is a lot of like like mental discipline, and I had to sort of learn that as a young person in college. Like there were these moments when I was physically like working, but I was mentally not there, and I had to sort of have these breakdowns essentially, of like what was going on in life and family and relationships, and getting to this point where my my mental capacity could handle sitting and being with myself. And then, when it's too much, when there's too much going on, you listen to like a podcast or you watch reality TV, which helps with, you know, numbing the noise. But there are moments where it's like really fun, really physical, um, and you just go for hours.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and especially as a young person dealing with a lot of different things, it's like, ooh, do I really want to sit in silence for this long and be in the moment? And talk a little bit about how your work explores a lot how trauma weighs on the search for self-identity. Like you're exploring more like raw imagery, intimate moments. Like we said, this is like very modern tapestries. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, self-portraiture was something that I was making when I was, first learning how to oil paint. Um, and the internet was also like coming, and MySpace and sort of all these places where you're taking pictures. We're all sort of getting webcams for the first time and digital cameras for the first time. And um, the self was really starting to like, um, you would have to sort of define yourself. You'd have to fill out these profiles and be this person. And um, so there was a lot of like self exploration and discovering who I am and differentiating myself from my family and working through things that I'm still working through, but that I was starting to sort of broach. And it just seemed natural. Like I've always been somebody who like, um, I guess, it's like not that I'm confrontational, but it's hard to settle for me. Like if there are issues, I really like to address the issues. And that can be a not a fun thing to do if you're sort of an avoidant, which my family can be. And um, so I've used my work as this platform to like address things that were always hard in quote unquote real life, you know.
Yeah, and how does your family feel about like having their eternal like problems on tapestry? Like, do you think they like, is it a way to communicate with them or they're just not really a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I had to sort of accept that like, trauma exists, memory exists. There are different interpretations of truth, and um, that people will deal with things on their own time, like you can't force anyone to heal at your pace. And so um, the work I've made, it has created issues. I'm not gonna, you know, not say that. I don't speak with my mother anymore just because I think I was healing at a pace and I was like evolving at a pace that she will never catch up to, and that it was really dampering my ability to like be an adult and be sort of like stable. And I had to realize that like, my work and my sort of like want for a better life um, was a road that I was going to start traveling down myself. And if anyone wanted to come, they would eventually, if they may, come. And so yeah, my work has definitely like brought up things that people don't want to talk about, and I totally respect that. Um, but I was there, and I think that's something that I'm like is an important sort of aspect. I was the middle child. I was a half kid. I was a step kid, and so there was this like sort of unreality of my life a lot of the time. Like people forgot I was there, and there was this like, like, do I exist? Does anyone hear me? How do I tell anyone anything? And so I I've come to accept that um speaking will make people uncomfortable, and that I'm okay with that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And to be able to put this stuff out there in your own way and express it and heal during all that is a beautiful thing. And like to be able to paint, draw, and weave. I mean, there's so much going on with the healing process here. It's a really beautiful thing to watch. And at the end of the day, it's like more about you than anybody else. Like you said, like it's about your healing. And, if other people want to come along with that, they are welcome.
Right. Right.
And can you share one of the more memorable projects you've done and what it meant to you?
Yeah, so in the past few years I've made some of the like the largest pieces I've ever made. I was invited to be in the 2022 Lyon Biennale, and so that the curators asked me to make like a giant piece, and so I made this 25-foot tapestry, and it was this beginning of this period of me sort of combining all of the stories and all of the narratives that I had been speaking about already within my work, but using this collaged method, um, which is really bringing me back to like when my sisters, we would make these collages out of magazines. You know, we would like create physical collages. And so, um, yeah, so those pieces have really sort of changed the trajectory of my work and allowed me to combine a lot of information. Um, and so they're telling stories about like, you know, relationships and trauma. And for me, it's all linked, you know, like I can never, um, when I was younger, I always sort of made it so that there was like work about like, you know, bodily functions and like menstruation. And I always was like, you know, you have to sort of, if you want my body, you're going to have to deal with its realities. And so as I grow older, I'm realizing like if anyone wants to know me, they have to understand the history that goes along with knowing me and sort of um, the things along the way that have changed how I interact with people. And so I've been trying to make my work like images of me that I've taken, you know, of my body for lovers or for myself, and then like images of me as a child, and then images of sort of text and references to trauma and sexual violence and things like that. So it has allowed me to create this sort of new visual language of um, a lot of information and asking the viewer to really like put things together themselves.
Yeah, it's like piecing together a book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
It's almost
story. Yeah.
like a memoir.
Right. Yeah. And I'm trying to sort of, you know, painters have this sort of luxury, or maybe it's not a luxury, maybe it's a curse, but painters seem to have this ability to make the same thing over and over again as this sort of like study or obsession. And with weaving, I always made one piece and moved on from that. But now I'm sort of going back to these characters, going back to drawings, reusing imagery, and sort of trying to allow or ask the viewer to like put in some work to decode or like, you know, catch on. So there's this like, um, I'm repeating, and I'm hoping that people will see that and start to like um, remember or um, understand better.
Yeah, to see the links between the parts of your life and the person you were at each piece of it.
Right.
And how do you stay motivated and inspired to keep going in your craft?
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I want to make. Um, and I spend a lot of time going back and thinking about things. And I have, you know, this box of 35 millimeter photographs. And I have, you know, an iPhone with years of photographs. And so, but there are things, you know, in my history, in my past that I really like want to see. And I have a hard time with those things where I want documentation, I want evidence of um places and people. And so I'm always sort of like looking for things, looking for information, looking for truths or evidence of places or people or events. Um, and you know, like life is continually unfolding. So like while I'm researching the history, the present is happening, and I'm having to sort of watch myself repeat patterns and you know have these bad um, um, intuitions that like you know I've seen repeat over in generations of the women in my family, and um, experiencing trauma and you know having to sort of heal. So there's this like back and forth of like life hitting you in the face and history unfolding. And um, for me, it's like it feels endless, like information feels endless, and I'm always trying to like be better, have a better response. Um, you know, I don't know that I'm self-critical, but I really think about life in like a recovery model where like every day is a step forward, and we can fail, but like we have to keep going. And I think um thinking of it that way for me has allowed me to keep pushing um through everything. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I feel a lot about the same way about life is like we're just evolving, we're figuring it out, and every day is a step in that direction.
yeah, for sure.
And you have a new solo exhibition coming to Paris, October, right now, and it's called Watering False Flowers. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I have a solo exhibition that opens October 12th at Cadet Capella. Um and yeah, it's a kind of a strange show. It's like work of images that my college roommates took that he would post on Flickr, and like there are these kind of like iconically college pictures, and you know I've sort of leaned on nostalgia in my romantic life as the safety net, but I didn't realize that it was sort of preventing me from having a current life. And looking back at these memories and looking back at this time, so much felt like possible, but then there were also these huge pain points that happened. And so I'm looking back at this person, and with this like yearning for, what would happen, but also trying to just see them for who they were at that time, and sort of solidifying that moment as a place that I'll never go back to. Um, and there's like my old like cassette player from middle school, and like a boombox, um, like when the old boomboxes used to say goodbye when you turned them off. Um, and there's some flowers and some, objects that were from relationships. And there's like a COVID test, which, COVID is just such a big thing. Um, it has really like revealed a lot of people's, you know, everything basically. Um, and yeah, so it's like a lot of moments in time of me, um, and how they, me thinking about how these moments sort of have stunted me or changed me. So,
I love that. And what do you hope to do with your work? What's the hope for the future?
I think I'm really thinking about how I mean, it goes back and forth, like I think there are times when I think like, oh, I can sort of soften, I can let go, unclench and be less vigilant, but then the world shows, another article or another horrible event, and um I think that like, oh, I have to sort of keep talking about these things because we're not there yet. And so um I go back and forth, I go back from I've been making these flowers, which are just these like super indulgently like technical, beautiful, like um explorations into color, and just making, and then I'm going back to like these sort of, traumatic events, and um you know research, and all of these things that are hard to sort of show, but I think are important because a lot of activism, activism is like a young people's game, and people really only get really empowered when they have like a mission. And then they get sort of exhausted, or they have their singular thing that they've worked on. And I think we have to sort of stay on this slow and steady track of like remembering that like we can't give up and we can't um, feel defeated. Although it's easy to feel defeated by things. And so I go back and forth. You know, I want to make beautiful things and I want to keep talking about important things that matter to me and that are unfortunately, you know, pervasive issues within, you know, culture.
Yeah, I think it's great when we can make beautiful things, but also, talk about things that are important to us and important to the world and make art out of it that we can all connect over. And define creativity in your own words.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because being an artist wasn't something that I like really sought out. I think creativity to me is a lot of making. So it's not this sort of like, there are moments when there are um, sort of magical, um, you know, like figuring out an image laying in bed and figuring out a composition. Um, but a lot of creativity to me is like the physical exploration of material and allowing my body to like be present and be useful. Um, yeah, creativity is hard. I think it's like this, it seems like this sort of like um frivolous idea, but I think in a lot of ways it's like being a kid in the woods, you know? It's like digging in the dirt and not knowing what you're going to find. And I think that's how I've always approached my practice is like, you know, excavating myself and being happy and being curious about what I'm finding.
I like that. That's really good. Digging in the dirt, not knowing, it's curiosity, just following like those whispers. I think that says a lot. And what are some of the best resources that have helped you on your creative journey?
Huh. I I think timing was a big one. I really benefited from when I graduated. Um, there was a lot of textile um, departments that were getting rid of looms. So like I really benefited from this moment in time when looms were free. So I've gotten two free looms, and that was like that really started my ability to make. And um, yeah, I think what a lot of just not having, you know, I think a lot of people say like going to art school is this like incredibly privileged thing, which I think is true, but um in my opinion, artists either have a lot or they have nothing, and I've always had nothing. I've had no attachments, no real responsibilities except for myself. And so, you know, leaning on being comfortable living in my car, you know, leaning on being scrappy and you know finding um, ways of making money and ways of surviving that I, you know, a lot of people just sort of like weren't comfortable doing. So um, being comfortable in the uncomfortable, maybe that's like um, my blessing. Um, but yeah, being an artist is such a bizarre life. You know, you sort of put these and being persistent, being stubborn, um, wanting for things, and um, and just I don't know. I think you know I remember getting one of my first residencies and then putting that on my resume and then getting other residencies. So there's this like these moments in time that sort of change the trajectory of life. Um, but you don't get anything if you don't apply. And so there's this weird like um chicken or the egg thing. So I
Yeah,
don't,
that makes total sense.
yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It kind of goes back to what you said about creativity. You're just like digging around trying to see if anything works, you know? That's like the artist life. Is like, does anybody want this? Is anyone going to get paid for this? Or am I just doing this for myself? And just trying to be scrappy and survive.
Yeah, and not really knowing. Like, I think that's something I'm really dealing with now is that like I really allowed myself to just be flexible. I always had jobs I could quit, and so like if I got a residency, it was like, okay, I'm going to this residency, whatever it takes. And so but that has really had consequences on my like relationships and my ability to sort of have these stable things. And so um, I really have always like sort of been flexible, applied for things, and then built my life around those things. And it's not, the most ideal thing in the long run, but it has been an amazing career. It's been, 11, 12 years of me making work, and then that's been amazing. But there are people who say, like, oh, you're so lucky, or you have all this time in the studio, whereas they have like relationships or kids or, various responsibilities. And I think in many ways, like they aren't giving enough credit to the energy and the sort of work that those things require, right? And so, um, yes, I have all this time, but I have a lot of things that I don't expect to actually have. I don't expect to have um, relationships, or I don't want kids. So it's like these um, sacrifices, or just like different life. It's a different life.
Yeah, like trade-offs or
Yeah,
different from the norm or what is considered like normal life by some. So there's always trade-offs, like the grass is always greener.
right, totally.
And where can people connect and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so my name is Erin M. Riley. There's a lot of Erin Rileys, so I like to keep the M. Um, and every one of my handles is exactly the same. My website is Erin M. Riley. So Instagram, so that's, you can find me there.
Perfect. And we'll share all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing today. And I can't wait to see watering false flowers in Paris.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.